Ready? Hi, my name is Jane Reed, and I'm here with Lynn Jericho of Imagine Self Academy, and we're talking about holy calm in chaotic times and how to attain it or how to get close to it. Lynn has been educating people for 30 years in sacred conversation, in blogs, she's had several books and audio blogs. And for many of us that have been lucky enough to approach her work through the Advent messages and Christmas messages, and then blogs all through the year, this is an exciting extension of what she offers. So, Lynn, tell
Oh,
us.
Jane. Okay.
Tell us about, could you give a brief synopsis of video one for those that weren't able to listen to it yet?
Well, and it's always good to revisit the key point. So the first one is this question of chaos, and our times are extraordinarily chaotic. And to unpack chaos, to not just globalize it, is very important. So we have collective chaos, which is what we're experiencing with the pandemic, what we're experiencing with racism and supremacy. It's what we're experiencing with the division in our social life. I mean, there's such extremes now between liberals and conservatives and the whole variation. So we don't know where we're going. We don't have a clear understanding of our times. It's just intense and very chaotic, where there's nowhere we can turn that feels like a sanctuary or
Right.
like there's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our personal chaos, which could be personal health issues, relationship issues, job issues, financial issues, just all the demands coming at us right now in our life. And then we have what I call the mosquito bites or micro chaoses. So it's the little annoyances that come up in the day. To go make a sandwich and there's no mayonnaise, or, to turn on the light in the middle of the night and have the bulb pop. And it's like, oh my God, I don't want to deal with this, and the little nagging things all the time, like my office full of papers. It's the micro chaos. But the chaos that's most important, and the one we really need to work with, which is what this course is all about, is our reaction chaos. So that's the recognition that as human beings, we have reactions to life, all right? Normal, healthy reactions. But we then have reactions to those reactions. And that's where we get messed up. That's where life goes to hell. And they happen just like that. We have no control over them. And then we often have reactions to the reactions to the reactions, the normal reactions. Equanimity, holy calm, is not about suppressing or doing away with normal, healthy reactions. We need them. They educate us. Feeling happy about something, feeling sad about something, feeling angry about something, feeling frightened by something, that's healthy. It gives us our world and enriches our inner life. But to be angry that we're sad or happy, I love being sad. There's a melancholic nature in me, so I will find a certain happiness in that, but it's a little weird. And we need to look at all of that. We need to understand our reactions to our reactions and make sure we're choosing them, that we have freedom. And of course, when we have that, it's equanimity actually that gives that to us. The ability to just have normal reactions and not have them trigger other reactions in us. So our job here in our path of self-development is to, here comes my granddaughter. Sabine, I'm busy.
But I want to watch it.
Okay.
Where's the eye?
Oh, I'll have to edit this out.
And spell on YouTube.
It's right there.
Yeah, but I just got to do it on home. If I does it and the thing I want, I can tell you.
Okay. Goodbye. Shut the door.
Hi, Sabine.
Bye.
Go on.
You just got a kiss.
I know. Both the kids are loving. So, all right.
So
when we're caught in reaction chaos, we need to develop equanimity, because reaction chaos, we're totally out of control and we're totally conditional, and we get tied up in knots of our reactions, and equanimity is how we untie those knots. Equanimity is the centering of the soul. It's our it adds so much to our lives. It makes it easier to celebrate. It makes it easier to be vulnerable. It makes it a lot easier to tell our truth. It makes it a lot easier to take risk.
So Lynn, equanimity doesn't sound like it's just an ordinary calm or something, like it's not a coat we take on. It's not like for some of us, we have learned to take a deep breath, count to 5. We've managed our responses. We have strategies to manage our responses so that we're calm, or that at least we give the appearance of calm. And then in our center, the chaos is here, but we project a serene exterior.
Oh, yes.
It sounds like this is a little beyond ordinary calm.
It's way beyond it. One, because there's so much of selfhood. With ordinary calmness, we're really working with our lower self, or our physical and etheric body. We want to feel calm and centered in our body, somatically. Mm-hmm. But in our consciousness, equanimity lifts us up. And what it lifts us up to is holy calm.
Oh,
and
okay.
Just that, those two words, holy calm, makes me cough. So holy calm is, I was just reading today the well-known phrase that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Part of what we're doing with equanimity is we're naming the parts. And I still have another tickle. So equanimity gives us a right relationship to the parts of our life. When we put them all together, there's something more there. And what is the more is holy calm. It's not, it's magic. It's mysterious. It's, holy calm is invincible. It's immeasurable. And it's the icing on the cake of equanimity.
Right.
So you make the cake and the icing appears.
So making the cake is the path, which is really equanimity. Yes. And the arrival in a place that is holy calm, which is ever present in us, but most of us don't have this pathway there. Right. And that's what we're talking about here, are the steps to get to that inner calm that's contained within us. So tell me about the steps.
All right. Well, the steps are, they're I've put together 8 steps, and what we're talking about in this conversation is the first 4 steps, which are the steps of perception, of perceiving. So it's getting a clarity about our lack of equanimity, because what we're doing to equanimity allows us to confront the beasts of our reactions and to name them and tame them. So our first job is perceiving with real depth what the reaction is and giving it its rightful name. So then we can work with it. So there are 4 steps here in perceiving. So the 4 steps are wonder, observation, recognition, and naming. And they're wonderful. Become a master of those 4 steps. There's nothing's going to get in your way. It's really great. And, you know, wonder is the beginning.
So tell us about, first of all, the way you say this, you know, naming the beast. That's what this video that we're in right now is talking about. Naming the beast. That's the crown of perceiving. So that almost has this sort of Virgil and Dante, like, you're going to take me on a journey here. So okay, so into hell. Okay. So
is coming head on with the beast.
Yeah, into the hell of our reactions.
Yep.
And so what is wonder? Because it sounds a little different than, it sounds like a little separate from observation and curiosity.
Well, and it's not wonderful. It's about being full of wonder, and full of wonder means that you're unconditional, you're unformed, you're innocent. I can remember when my daughter was born, looking at this newborn with wonder. I was completely emptied of any preconceptions, that this was a mystery I'd given birth to, and I could only wonder. I you know, I couldn't ask questions, I couldn't have thoughts, I had no memories. I was in this beautiful sacred state of wonder. So I like to think about wonder as what exists before the beginning. It's the hearing that has no sound yet. It's the gazing that has no image yet. It's really extraordinary. And once you start knowing how to wonder, the other steps fall into place. We mess up on the other steps if we haven't wondered, because we're living in assumptions. When we get to observation, there's already existing assumptions or existing wishes. So that we want to come to observation in a state of wonder. So what we're wondering at can speak to us, can begin to put thoughts, imaginations, inspirations, even if it's the most awful reaction, if it's so full of disgust, which is, there's no equanimity in disgust at all. And so if you look at something that disgusts you, I had a visitation with about a 2-inch roach yesterday, and I used to just go, ugh, you know, total disgust. This practice of equanimity, I can look at a roach and see its beauty and see its function. I still don't want it in my home, but I'm not reacting. I'm wondering and I'm observing. And what a difference that makes. So observation is about really letting the thoughts show up and receiving them because you're in the state of wonder. So is
So
that getting clear?
it's clear. Is it, just a question then, is it some objectivity about our subjectivity?
Well, usually when we objectify something, we've put it in a box. So wonder is sort of the opposite of objectivity. It's kind of conscious subjectivity that allows us to really see the truth.
Oh, okay. So I think what I mean by objectivity is that we're kind of we're not within the narrative, we're not within our reaction, we're sort of stepped back from
Yeah,
our reaction
right.
and looking at it like as though here,
Yes.
well,
So
here,
that's a real active participation.
okay.
It's not passive. You're not retreating. You're not being aloof. All right. You're really in it.
Yeah.
But you're, I mean, many ways when we talk about our angel or God or some kind of spiritual reality observing us with enthusiasm, with interest, but not with reaction, not with judgment, not with opinion. All right. So all that's just junk. That may allow us to pass a test in school, but it won't allow us to know ourselves.
Yeah, I think that really helps me understand wonder in a new way because what you're talking about is no opinion, no judgment, no bias. I'm just receiving what's here.
Right.
And in fact, you said it's pre-thought. So we're just open to what is here. And then the next step of this is where the thought and the curiosity about what's come to us
Well,
starts.
yes, and the word curiosity always, it's got a lower kind of feeling to it. So wonder, when you think of holy calm, you're not going to use the word curiosity. You're going to use wonder. And so what comes with the observation is often a sort of a sense of awe. With wonder comes awe and reverence. And so even if you're looking at the nastiest reaction, one that totally triggers you and makes you do things you don't want to do, but you're so triggered, once you step back and study, observe it. I mean, walk around it, look at it from every different perspective you can think of, something starts appearing and you see little pieces, little sparkles, glimmers. And then you move to the next step, which is what I call recognition. And it's where you take all the pieces and you treat it like a jigsaw puzzle. Again, you're participating with an unconditional reverence for what you're observing.
So in observing, there's the seeing, listening, feeling. You're taking these observations from so many different standpoints. And this is something that I know from working with you. It's so valuable to have an observer accompanying us in some regard because you ask questions, you in particular ask questions that are penetrating to, you know, it's the right question at the right time often. Well, what is that? Why are you
The
feeling
question is there to support the next step, which is naming. But I'm also in my work and listening to clients or in preparing a course. I begin with wonder, I go to observation, and then I start recognizing things. I start putting the pieces together. I work with the four corners and then the edges, and then I start moving in towards the center. And that's what real sacred conversation is all about. So in many ways, the path to equanimity is having a sacred conversation with yourself and with genuine interest, reverent interest. You are an extraordinary, unique human being. You are here with meaning and purpose. And looking at this, finding your equanimity makes such a difference. And so when you see the whole and you recognize what you're looking at and you give it its name, it's extraordinary what happens. What the beasts, the demons, the crazy thoughts, the ridiculous reactions all start being there. I mean, you can call them forth to go on to the next 4 steps, which we'll talk about in the next video. But naming, you can't understand something you can't name. You can't find a right relationship into something you can't name. And
so this naming is what this naming allows us to move to the next 4 steps, which are understanding. And of course, we're weaving between these steps. It's not a linear process, having been through it myself on many different archetypes. I mean, it's not linear. It's also like it's so possible. I mean, I'm thinking that some people hearing this video are going to think, you know, I don't have the time for this. I already have so much chaos in my life. I don't have the time to go through this. And I think part of, you have your own thoughts. One of my thoughts is we don't have the time not to go through it.
right.
Because it's not something that we have, you know, it's something that contributes to the joy in our life, but also to the being able to discern right action in our lives.
Right.
And that if we go deep into one archetype, let's say, there are ripple effects through our entire systems of our body that help us with our next archetype and our next archetype. At least that's been my experience. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very important. I mean, it's transformed my whole life working with these 4 steps. I mean, everything that my life was so filled with horrible abuse and craziness that I had to find some equanimity, or I would have been long dead or locked up.
Yeah.
And so, and it's allowed me to, right now with social divides that we're dealing with, that it's, I mean, I just had this thought because one of the key experiences in my childhood that was filled with joy and love were my 2 earliest best friends. And one of them had Down syndrome and the other had cerebral palsy. And the gift of that was it took away my resistance to difference. You know, I love people for their differences. So now we're living in a world where there's no interest in differences. There's just judgment and hostility. And everything is exacerbating that. So we need equanimity so we can return to being interested in others. So in such a way that we're not going to get triggered, that we can manage when somebody comes up with a political statement that is so counter to what you believe in, you can be interested in what makes them believe that. Who are they? You know, these differences are something we need to meet with equanimity. And then if it works, then suddenly the conversation gets bathed in holy calm and all kinds of transformation occurs. And I'm not talking about you're able to convince them who to vote for. I'm talking about this blessing, this grace that allows us to meet difference without disgust, without judgment.
Well, and it sounds like what you're talking about too is meeting ourselves with and observing our own self-disgust and our own judgments and biases and penetrating those to in our observations and recognition, so that when we claim more of ourselves and we become safe for ourselves, of course we are going to be able to call that into service, those beasts and ourselves, to call them into service so that we can be that for somebody else. I
So,
know, yeah, naming isn't the end, but it's the journey.
yeah, and it's cyclical, you know, it circles back all the time. You know, I'll make an observation and maybe even a recognition, and then I'll go back to wondering again. And, you know, that will lead me to the true name, the name that gives this power to control the reactions. But when we look at Steiner's 6 basic exercises, you know, we don't like ourselves because we have out of control thinking. We don't like ourselves because we have out of control will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we feel we don't have any strong will forces. If I could tell you the number of clients I get that say, I just don't have will forces. So they're in a reaction, they're judging themselves. So they have to be met with equanimity so that they can then see how they can meet themselves. You know, that's what I'm doing all the time with my clients in my courses is here's how to meet the intolerable self, you know, and transform it into self-tolerance, into openness to who you are, you know, into understanding what your thoughts are all about.
Yeah, and it's amazing alchemy when we can do that, because we do have the ability then to tolerate more difference, and more empathy, more like just a more willingness to behold the other with reverence, because we've penetrated some of these things within ourselves. So on this path of perceiving, you're going to have to blank it out. So what do I want to say? What else do we want to say here, Lynn?
I don't know. There's a lot we've said and a lot we haven't said. Oh, the Goethe quote.
Also, it says here, share an experience of perceiving.
Yeah, so Jane.
I feel like I've done that a couple of times in a way that people will get without going through it, but I can go through an example too. What do you think?
So I've talked in looking at these 4 steps of perceiving and our reactions to our reactions. So I wanted to bring up 4 feelings that we often get when we're in a state of chaos. So we can look at how some of us, are these what we feel around the pandemic or around the political situation in the world or in the US. So it's feelings of being hopeless, helpless, powerless, or clueless. And oh my God, I go there.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot in social media that just feeds on that. All right. So, you know, what are my resources? If I'm feeling helpless, I need to calm. I need to get this place of equanimity. So, one, I can start looking at the resources that can help. I start looking at the choices I can make that give me power. I can develop insights that are the clues that are going to make the big difference. And I can find the imagination that gives me hope. And, you know, that's equanimity does that.
So when we're in these first 4 steps on this pathway, we can observe our feelings of helpless and hopeless and powerless in the ways that we're approaching whatever is robbing us, whatever reactive chaos that we have. That's an important part of where I feel like you're giving us a little tip about how to start this, because we might, like, just as we're listening to this, feel helpless or powerless about something. We could begin with whatever comes in to when we consider that question, just start with holding that in wonder.
Right. But again, that's a reaction that we have reactions about. So you have to go back to wonder.
Yeah.
All right. So you can name, oh, I'm feeling helpless, but you won't feel any strength in dealing with the helplessness until you go back to wonder and start observing and then recognizing. And then you start naming the parts of hopelessness or helplessness. All right. And then you can move on to the understanding activities that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and so then there's another way to go about this also that I've experienced myself, and that's with working with an archetype. Just having a process or that I'm interested, somehow it's come into my consciousness, like betrayal is a great example. I'd never worked with the concept of betrayal. I hadn't thought about it. In fact, if anything, the chaos I had was in staying as far away from that word, had like a fence around it that I wasn't going close to. That makes sense in my biography. It makes sense to my system. It doesn't feel like a place that's going to, not only is it not safe, I don't see how it's going to allow me to get through life by thinking that I've been betrayed. So I was staying away from it,
right,
as far away as I could. And when that word, you had said this to me in one of our sessions, and I can remember noticing my body's reaction to slide away from it, dismiss it. And for the next week, I had in me this sense of wonder, really, because what was that reaction? And it wasn't just the question of it. I mean, I had that question, but the wonder was, betrayal, just like that, like what, you know. And so then when the process of observing different betrayals wanting to penetrate it, wanting to see my own betrayals, which we did in some of our sessions, my betrayals, perpetrated betrayals that I was the perpetrator, the ways my body has betrayed me in my miscarriages, um, just the whole a bigger picture comes into focus about that, and being able to claim that word betrayal as something I do and is done to me, understanding a little bit more of the mystery of that word and why, and opening the gate to it, basically, instead of it being walled up, oh, I actually can approach some of it. It's not comfortable to do. And just in the naming of it, we haven't even got to the next for, although some of those steps keep coming in. I understand what you mean about naming the beast and how that allows us for it to be, something that's at our feet, in a sense. Still wild, but at our feet. We've penetrated it to some degree.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going through so many sessions and so much of my own experience where there's been a place in me that I wouldn't let myself go to, or I wouldn't name it. It had to remain unnamed because I didn't want to own it. It's something I excluded from myself. And so there was always this tear in my soul of where I wouldn't let myself be. And when you start wondering at those places in your soul, where your soul looks like Swiss cheese, what's in that hole? You won't be whole until you look into the hole. I mean, and you can't look into the hole without equanimity. And once you do that exercise enough times, you have a living experience of holy calm. And with holy calm, you can look into all these holes without reacting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you've designed a vessel that you then and the thread, the thread is within you now. You have the path in, you have the path back out. And we're always coming into equanimity and out of equanimity. It isn't something that we stay, just like any kind of balance point, we're in it.
Right.
We enjoy that. And we go
so
out.
It's Goethe, the great poet and scientist, had this wonderful phrase of any object well contemplated creates a new organ of perception. All right. So
Beautiful.
and any reaction named and understood through the activity of equanimity creates a vessel for holy calm. And that's sweet.
And on that note, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Jane.
For this information, for your research. I know the effort, I really sincerely know the effort that it takes to be an original thinker. And I've been the beneficiary of your original thoughts. And Lynn, thank you so much for sharing this.
Hey, Jane, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
That was good, Lynn.